we're now moving on to the last presentation of the afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce Brian Hamilton, the president of IAHSS. We've had the sitting president of IAHSS join us for, I believe, every single focus on healthcare. Brian has been a longtime supporter of this event, attendee and speaker, so it's my pleasure to introduce him in this role. Brian Hamilton is, as I said, the president of the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety, a systems engineer in Omnigo's healthcare vertical. Brian has been involved in the security industry since 2005, primarily within the healthcare field. His healthcare experience includes frontline and leadership roles in both the public and private sector. He served as faculty at Fleming College, Seneca College, and previously Humber College. He was twice named a top 10 prof at Fleming. He has been able to combine his passions for teaching and security with the Healthcare Security Cast podcast. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you for that introduction. It's funny. It's funny how much you can accomplish just by staying in the same field and working through things over time. It sounds like a lot. It's funny just to look back and see how things have changed in the last 15 years. But again, thank you for your time today. I appreciate I put myself in a precarious position here going last because I've got to see Scott present. I've got to see Jeff present. I've got to see Todd Milne, who I think very highly of, receive an award. So it's tough to follow those names, but today I'll be giving the president's presentation, and I've decided to do things a little bit differently based on a lot of feedback that I've heard. So generally what I've been told is that this presentation is almost the same presentation every year. So I wanted to mix things up a little bit and just share some of the things that we've accomplished this year and maybe get into more of the behind the scenes stuff so people can really see what does go on day to day with the executive leadership of the IAHSS. I'm going to actually talk about data warehouse a little bit, so it's fitting that Jeff already presented. So Jeff, I'll probably steal your Lego slide at some point and use that somewhere else. And I'll steal a Jeffism as well because you only had 10 minutes today, but the data warehouse is going to help us all be more business-like as well. So I'll start with some updates in terms of education. So the one thing that's been I've seen a lot of this year is we've had new programs of distinction. We've had a number of them in Ontario, largely driven by Paladin Security and some of their partner hospitals. So we've seen a lot of new programs of distinction, which means that we have a lot of people doing our training, the basic, advanced, and supervisory training. And again, we saw a spike in that during the pandemic. Some of that for obvious reasons because there was limited training available, and we've seen a bit of a drop off, but it's still higher than it's been in years prior to the pandemic. So again, our training is getting out there. We've seen the training, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk about the international side of things. But we've seen an uptick in our training internationally as well. So there are some hospitals, one specifically in Ireland, who has made a requirement in their RFP that whichever proponent comes in, they do have to make sure all of the staff are getting that IHSS training. So we have that. Singapore, they've done something very similar where they're trying to mandate it at an in-house hospital. And again, so people are seeing our training. People are taking the training. Our CHPA as well. We've seen an increase. I've seen a huge increase in CHPAs this year, which is always positive to see, especially with the cutoff being a little bit higher for that to be a successful test taker. It's now a 75.5% requirement, where it was 70 in the past. But we're still seeing people being successful in that endeavor. And again, in the last year and a half, we've seen new CHPAs in both Kenya, a couple in Kenya, and one in Singapore as well. And I'm confident that we'll see one in Ireland pretty soon as well, because there's that program of distinction is becoming quite coveted. Additional notes from an international perspective. We've seen some growth internationally, and we actually decided to tackle one of our strategic objectives through a program that our CEO, Virginia Pentrancosta, was able to set up, where we actually had a group of students from the University of Illinois, as part of one of their projects, do a case study for us, essentially, or a business case for us as to where we should focus our attention our attention for some international growth. And I won't share the results of that, but I was quite intrigued by the information that they shared with us. So as a board, we're going to have to look at the results and see what our next steps are. But again, we've seen a lot of growth in areas such as Kenya, Saudi Arabia. So we've seen some growth in the African continent, but again, we just continue to see growth. In terms of affiliations, we've actually been able to see some growth internationally through our work in affiliation. So Paul Sarnice, our immediate past president, recently did a presentation at the International Hospital Federation Conference, which was happening in Dubai. So again, he was able to establish some relationships there. Yeah, the way he describes it is basically a IHSS commercial that he gave to all of these hospital leaders from around the world. So it was really unique opportunity. Around the same time, Eric Clay was actually presenting for NAS and visiting hospitals in the UK. So we were able to get a bit of a foothold there too. So NAS is an association that's very similar to IHSS, but it is, again, specific to the UK. So based on Eric's presentation and making some connections there, we've had some individuals who have since become members of the IAHSS as well. So again, seeing a lot of positive things happening in that sense. Just in terms of getting our message out there, getting our brand out there. Another place where we were able to see some significant growth in this area was during Healthcare Security and Safety Week, which for us here in Canada happens to fall on the Thanksgiving week. So it's the Sunday to the Saturday of that week. And this year, we were able to, and again, this was another great strategic move by Virginia, but she was able to get the fact that it was Healthcare Security and Safety Week put in the American Hospital Association Journal. So if anybody was watching on social media during that week, there was a lot more posting than we've seen in past years. There were even times where you could read the post and see that this was done by communications or PR at a specific hospital, because it didn't quite fit what Healthcare Security and Safety Week is. But the important thing is that outside of security, now people are recognizing this week and recognizing our frontline security professionals, which is a very important thing. So I thought that was a great move. We saw so much sharing of what different hospitals were doing to celebrate their staff. So again, that was another great thing that we saw this year. Another thing that we've done to help address some of the growth internationally is we've introduced we've actually redone our membership levels. And we previously had, I think it was, if I remember offhand, there was about 5 different membership levels. We had a partner, which was specifically targeted for our vendor members, a professional member, which is somebody who worked specifically in a facility or oversaw a healthcare security program. We had a healthcare stakeholder. We have an associate membership. So we've kind of consolidated those membership levels, made the definitions more broad, because again, healthcare is changing. We're seeing a lot more people who weren't necessarily people that we would have envisioned as someone who would be a part of our association now becoming members, because their scope of work has adjusted and it now encompasses healthcare. So we've gone with essentially we have 2 membership levels. We have just an IHSS member, which is all inclusive of our vendors, consultants who can demonstrate healthcare experience, our day-to-day practitioners, and then our associate members, which is those frontline security staff, and essentially really anybody who doesn't fit within the other category. And as an extension of that, we've introduced an emerging market membership, which is, again, it's going to be that same IHSS member. So again, we want to, the main target is going to be those consultants and those healthcare security practitioners. But the emerging market it essentially offers discounted pricing based on the national bank's countries that are listed under that emerging market. So places like Kenya, for example, they'll pay a discounted rate for that membership. So it's really just helping us get into other countries that we may not have otherwise had the opportunity to get into, and again, benefit from their knowledge and experience, and then benefit from ours as well. Another successful thing that we accomplished this year was our ACNE. We had record attendance at our Reno event. We had 584 people total, 36 were virtual. And hopefully we can build on that. It's nice to be able to say that we had a record-breaking year in my year as the president, but I hope that we, again, continue to grow. And next year we have an even better turnout when we're in Nashville. So next year, again, we'll be in Nashville at the Gaylord Opry, a very great venue. We had an opportunity to visit it for our most recent board meeting. And I think if you're going to be attending and you have the opportunity to bring your significant other or your family, I think this would be a great spot to take advantage of that. One thing I'll mention, because I'm looking at the names of people who are currently on the call and thinking of some of the questions that I get in terms of a Canadian event. So IAHSS, we do intend to bring events back to Canada. Right now, it is a bit of a challenging time. Before the pandemic, we had a kind of a rotation where we were coming to Canada every 7 years for ACNE. We feel that right now it's just not the time to do that. There are going to be challenges with travel still to this day as a result of, again, some international travel restrictions from a lot of our American hospitals. So but there is still a good potential for a event to happen in Canada. Again, I don't want to give any details. I'm going to be very careful here to share information that you wouldn't necessarily know, but also not get myself in trouble by oversharing some of the things that we're discussing. But IHSS does have every intention of coming back to Canada for events. So I'll leave it at that. Martin, if you do want to hit me up afterwards to talk about that further, feel free to do so. Martin's the one who's asked me about this the most, so that's why I mentioned his name. Another great thing that we were able to do in the last few years in terms of committees was establish a chapter leadership group. So because we eliminated the regional members that we did have a few years ago. This was a greater way for all of our members to take part in. Essentially, it's a conference call. It was one of our regularly scheduled meetings where we have a number of chapter leaders join in, and we share feedback, we share challenges, we share successes. And I think this has been a really great working group. I've seen Sergio, who just finished his time as our chapter chair, attended a lot of those meetings, as did many of the chapter leadership members. But again, on average, there's usually about 40 people, give or take, on that call. Sometimes even more than that. But it's been a very good working group, and we've been able to accomplish a lot through there and really identify some really strong individuals. The other thing too, so since I'm talking about chapter leadership, I just want to congratulate the new chapter leadership that has stepped up to lead the Ontario chapter. I know Scott Jupp did have to leave the call, but Scott Jupp was previously a chapter chair, and I think professionally Scott Jupp is aging like wine, so I think he'll do a phenomenal job, just like he did in the past. He has some really great ideas and great strategies that's, I think, going to push our chapter forward in the years to come. So congratulations to our new chapter leaders, who have been, ironically enough, previous chapter leaders, but that's Scott Jupp, Calvin Miller, Noreen Milne, as well as longstanding chapter leader Brad Stewart. So congratulations, and look forward to your leadership, and look forward to what our chapter will look like in the years to come. A couple of other things. So the data warehouse, and there's actually a question that came in, so I'll address this question. And the question is, how far off is the data warehouse project from, well, how far off is the IHSS data warehouse from being a reality? And I'll say, to give a political answer, we're a lot closer than we are 6 years ago when we started having these conversations. But actually, in all honesty, we've made a lot of progress. We're actually at the point right now where we have a subject matter expert who's working with the company that we've selected to build the back end of the data warehouse, and that's Scott McMillan. Scott has a lot of you will know Scott McMillan. He's one of our very strong volunteers from British Columbia. He does an unbelievable amount of work for our association. If you've been to past conferences, you've probably seen him present specifically on data as well. So he's the perfect person to be representing us in this regard. But right now he actually went through and did a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work involved in building all of these out. But Scott's done a lot of work to get our first real test, I guess, poll, if you will, done. He's going to be doing a salary survey, but he had to go through a tremendous amount of information, really, just to even break things down to the point where we have usable categories. He eliminated a number of questions to get it down to a reasonable number of questions. So again, this will be the first thing that we're launching to really test out the back end of this. We have engaged some incident reporting companies to be involved with the project as well. So it's moving along very nicely. We've got a lot of support from, I guess I'll say, both from healthcare facilities who are willing to share their data, as well as companies who are willing to engage in making that happen. So That's where the data warehouse is now as it stands. And then the last thing, I'll actually I'll just, for everybody's knowledge, maybe for people who don't spend as much time on social media, or if you don't check every single email that comes through, the new members of the board of directors were elected in the last month. So our new board members, our president-elect going into next year is going to be Eric Clay. He will be joined by the president's, or the vice president's secretary, who is Tony Pope out of Indiana. And our new member at large is John Deming from Texas. So again, a pretty diverse group. Another thing that I could speak to is the nominations committee, because I do get a lot of questions about how the nominations committee is formed, what that whole process looks like. I'll give a very high level overview of what that actual process is, and then just talk about some of the things that we consider in there. But it's led by the immediate past president, so it's going to be my responsibility this upcoming year to get together a group of our members who meet a certain criteria. One of those being a holder of a CHPA and having served within IAHSS. But we'll get 6 of these members together. They will conduct interviews of the individuals who apply for who submit a nomination for one of the upcoming positions. They'll go through the vetting process. It's actually a fairly rigorous process. They go through an interview process, and then we come with we will, based on what's submitted, based on all the work that they do, the slate will be presented to the board. Two nominees at each position, maximum of 2 nominees, because in the last 2 years we have had the president-elect position run unopposed. So, and I do get questions around that as well. I'm happy to address any of those concerns that people may have offline. But what I will say is, I think the president-elect is it's a 3-year commitment. I think it's enough of a responsibility that if somebody doesn't want to do the position, I think it's better that, the position run unopposed, rather than having to pull out having to just find a candidate who may not necessarily be what they want to do. So I think it's, the process has worked out well. We've done everything we can. We've taken a lot of feedback from the members to make sure that it is a process that kind of meets all of the needs. There is an actual contested slate, but again, the last couple of years were a bit of an anomaly where we didn't have a second president-elect nominee. So hopefully that will change this year, but again, we'll see in the months to come. Now, I've covered kind of the main things that I wanted to cover. I think the data warehouse is a big one, and hopefully I've answered that question to your satisfaction. But it is moving along very well, and hopefully in 2023 we'll finally be able to start really seeing some of the results of that data warehouse being in place. But if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to address those at this point. And again, just congratulations, Todd Milne. I want to say Todd has meant a lot for my career. So congratulations on your award. I don't think I would have had a lot of the opportunities that I've had provided for me throughout my career if it wasn't for crossing paths with Todd Milne and working for him in the past, as he really, I would say, helped get me kind of in the right direction. So thank you for that. So I'll open it up for any questions. I did answer I think I've answered the one question, hopefully to your satisfaction, that was requested. But if there are no more questions, Neil, I'll turn it back over to you, but I'll continue to monitor for any questions that may come in as well.
Great. Thank you, Brian. I don't see any more questions at the moment, but I have a few closing remarks. So if we see one pop up, I'll definitely point that in your direction. Yes. So that basically brings us to the end of today's Focus on Healthcare Security event for 2022. I would like to thank all of our speakers for participating today in their great presentations, and our sponsors and partners, Garda World, Everbridge, Active Witness, ASSA ABLOY, Johnson Controls, and the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety.